Hey, everybody that's jumping on. Just trying to get all the tech going here. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Let us know where you're coming in from the comments, where you're joining us from. I got a couple different screens going on, so we're going to get started. We're just going to let people start joining. Pennsylvania, Stratum. Hi, everybody. We're slowly popping on. I'm just going to give a few minutes so I see like where the numbers are so nobody misses anything. Everybody can hear me okay? Just let me know. So today is going to be awesome. I'm super excited to get started. And so know that everybody that's in the general audience, we're going to keep going. And then once I'll try to answer questions at the end, but I have a lot of content in day one that I want to go through, but I don't want to lose you either because I know that I can start talking in my brain and get going. And sometimes it can be a little bit overwhelming, and that is not my goal. So if anybody is ever feeling lost, just let me know. Like totally just let me know, because there's a lot of information in this brain of me doing this personally for over 30 years and then professionally close to 18 years. So I just am so grateful that you're here and that you're literally taking the time to realize that, you know, your health is so important. And it is like the grounding of everything of who you are. And when your health is off and you're just not like running at your full potential, it's going to limit it, whether it's going to be with your family or your job or your, you know, your life or showing up as who you're meant to be on this earth. And that's really why I'm so passionate about healing chronic disease. So let me briefly share my story before I just really dive into sugar detox. And, you know, many of you have heard my story before, but when I was in my teenage years, I was severely depressed and I would use all my energy to get through the week. And then on the weekends, I would sleep. And then I would get up and do it all over again. And what was offered to me was either an antidepressant or a birth control pill. And you're saying, why the birth control pill? Well, my menses were so bad that they would give me Tylenol with codeine. And so I knew that 2 pills were not going to take care of my health, either one of them. And the story runs deep, but I decided I was going to keep searching because I knew no pill would heal me. So I knew that it was up to me to figure this out. And so it wasn't until I found a naturopath personally. And at that time, I was in the apparel industry, which I loved and I missed, but I loved it. And this is where my journey takes me now, that I really stepped into healing. And why is food and nutrition and sugar so passionate? Because until I changed my nutrition and got to the foundation of who I was as an individual and created that baseline, then did I heal. Why do I say that? Because when I was 18 to 25, I saw other naturopaths and they were almost kind of giving me a pill for an ill as well. So they were kind of giving me a natural supplement, but the cloud wasn't coming off my brain. I felt brain fog. I felt, you know, bloated all the time. I couldn't lose weight. So hence, here we are today, you know, 30 years later. And if I didn't have that back when I was 25, I wouldn't be where I am today. So really kudos to you for everybody that's showing up. If you have questions, drop them in the chat. I'll try to be aware of the questions, but that's really why I'm passionate. So I want to ask you all a question to think about before I step you into your vision of health. When was it in your mind? And you can put it in the chat or you can just get a handle on. And I would suggest taking out a pad, a pen and paper, a journal, wherever you like, write your notes down so that you can review these each day. When you last went to your primary care physician, what was the report they gave you? Or maybe you see a specialist. And then did they tell you that your health was good? However, when you left there, you realize that, you know what? I still don't feel like my best self. I still don't feel like I am 100% on board with feeling 100%. And so, why I'm asking you that question is because, the primary cares are amazing. I have this conversation all the time with patients when they get frustrated, but they only have 10 or 15 minutes to visit with you. And they have about 3 to 5 hours. There's different numbers that I hear that they actually get a nutrition. And so when I look at this, I think to myself, holy cow, no wonder we're in a healthcare crisis. They're pushing big pharma medications. That's what they know, right? Me as myself is encouraging, how can we change our diet? How can we create a customized treatment plan? And how can we get to the bottom of our health? So hopefully that makes sense. And that's the start of where I'm going. So the first thing I really want you to think about is, how are you feeling about your health? Where is your destination going for you to create a vision for your health that is actually the absolute best vision for yourself? Do you see where you're going? Do you see where the symptoms are stopping you? I want you to keep that in your mind and read it each day when we meet, because that's so important. Because we have a vision of where we're going with our families or our children or our grandchildren or our loved ones, or we get up every day and we just live life. Well, if we don't create a plan to live our life that day or aware of where we're going, our calendar, however you set that up, then the day will just go by us, right? It's the same thing with our health. We want to have plans, we want to have goals, we want to have a destination. And we also want to know, maybe like 10 years ago, we felt like this, and now we're feeling like we have a headache every day, or we're feeling bloated every day. Like, those are messages for us. And they're such important messages. And our vision for our health, it's internal. So we have the strength of the force that clarifies like where we want to go, or like, how did we feel? I'm not saying we're going to feel like we're 16 or 18 again. And forgive me if I have a 16 or 18-year-old. I'm just using a number here, no judgment. But we may not feel like we did 5 or 10 years ago. But why? That's always my question. Know your why and know where you're going. So hopefully that's making sense as people are jumping in. We've got Zoom, we've got Facebook, we've got Instagram. So I'm hitting every place because I'm just so passionate about the subject. So just like drop a message in if that makes sense. Do you have your vision? Are you ready to go? Do you know where your symptoms are stopping you? Do you know what you're struggling with? Because having that in our head is going to help take us to the next level. Sound good? All right, so let's do a deep dive. So today is all about understanding the effects of sugar on our body and the macronutrients. And you're going to say, what's macronutrients? Just let me get there, okay? So I want you to create a way of living for you to get your health on track. And I want you to remember that. Again, how am I going to get my health on track? Sorry about that. So let's talk about sugar. Okay. So I really want to start with sugar is a drug. It's an acceptable drug. It gives you a high, gives you a low, and you just crave for more, right? That's literally what sugar does. It's more addictive than cocaine. And those of you that got the emails and followed up, like the reason why I put the emails out like that is it's really addictive and it's everywhere. You know, there's all sorts of statistics on the internet of like how many people have diabetes, how many people are insulin resistant and undiagnosed. And so this is like a big deal. Like there's so many people addicted to sugar. So what does sugar actually do? It hijacks the brain. And that's your natural reward center. So when you consume sugar, and we're going to talk about all different kinds of sugar, it triggers the release of neurotransmitters in the brain, which are your feel good neurotransmitters. Those are your dopamine, your serotonin, and I'm sure you've all heard of endorphins. Like that's what gets you excited, you hear people like, "Oh, I love that runner high." That's an endorphins kicking in. So it's those neurotransmitters are connected to pleasure, they're connected to mood, and they're connected to a sense of well-being. So the brain gets this surge of these feel-good chemicals, and guess what it does? It craves more sugar. So the experience of that level of reward makes it very difficult to stop that sugar addiction. Sugar's addictive capability is the impact on the brain, and it gets this vicious cycle. So remember, I said it's a drug, it's an acceptable drug. It gives you a high, it gives you a low, and you want more. So, how can we understand how it actually affects our moods? How does it affect our digestive system? Weight gain. Is everybody with me right now? Like, are we getting this? Everybody that's joining in, we can comment of all three channels here. Just let me know, like, this is making sense, or can you pull back, or there's a question. I've got three monitors going on here. So let's just really realize, like, I want this to hit home. It's not your fault. It's not your fault that you're addicted to sugar. It's not your fault that all these processed foods have sugar in them. It's a challenge. So let's talk about how sugar can affect the body, like the weight gain, your energy crashes, your digestive issues. I'm not sure what you're all struggling with, but maybe it's joint pain, maybe it's inflammation. I'm not sure. It could even be like high blood pressure. It could be diabetes, fatty liver disease. Like, just know what you're struggling with, and let's connect the dots. So let's talk about digestion first. So my general piece on digestion with sugar is this. First of all, at all costs, the bowels have to function. Nobody ever wants to talk about this, but the bowels remove, along with the urine, like what the body doesn't need. If your body is backed up and you're constipated and you're not having stool a minimum of twice a day, that can cause an issue. Then you're doing excessive sugar consumption, and that's gonna have many of you heard microbiome? Like, that's your gut microbiome. That's a messaging in your gut. That's a bacteria in your gut. And that can lead, large amounts of sugar can lead to bloating. It can lead to gas. It can lead to diarrhea. It can even lead to, many of you have probably heard, leaky gut syndrome. What does bacteria love? It loves sugar. What does candida slash fungus in the gut love? It loves sugar. This is what it feeds off of. And at an extreme, depending on where it could be in the body, unfortunately, cancer loves sugar. Cancer loves inflammation. It causes inflammation. So when the gut is off, our gut is our largest immune system. I'm going to get to the immune system in a minute. Then when an infection comes our way, viral or bacterial or allergies, like then our gut can't handle it. Our immune system can't fight it off because it's so inflamed with sugar and the microbiome isn't balanced. So the other piece that so many of us struggle with is weight gain. Sugar is super high in calories. It lacks essential nutrients. What we talked about with the brain, it makes it really easy to be consumed in excess because we're not feeling full. It's not nutrients dense. And then when we're consuming sugary foods, that can contribute to weight gain and increase the risk of obesity. So let me just go on a little tangent here so that you understand what's happening. So when we're dealing with cholesterol, it's not a fat problem, it's a sugar problem. It's a sugar problem. I want you to all hear that. Like it is a sugar problem. So what happens? So I'm going to have a little fun here because when I teach my patients, I teach one, I teach all, then they get it. So let's imagine you eat a bolus of food and you get some sugar. Sugar goes into your system, your pancreas. There's a lot of other things that happen if we have a healthcare practitioner on here. I'm just making it super simple for those that don't understand healthcare. We eat a bolus of food that we chew it, say it's sugary. The pancreas releases insulin. Insulin grabs the sugar. It goes up. There could be a whole army of them. It goes up to the muscle cell and it says, hey, do you guys need any sugar? If you eat an abundant amount, the muscle cell's like, I'm all set. I got enough sugar. You haven't moved your body today. I don't need any more sugar in my muscle cell. So sugar has to go somewhere. You can't have elevated amounts of sugar or low amounts of sugar and be alive. Hence, why do you hear people going into high blood sugar and almost going into a coma, right? So the sugar has to go somewhere. So now it's like, okay, the muscle cell's full. Where do I go? Oh, let's go over to the fat cell or the adipose cell. What's that? Knock, knock. Do you need sugar? Sure, I'll take sugar. Then once all you start to get bloating in areas that you don't want it. You start to get fat behind the arm. You get it in the abdominal obesity area. Your waist hip ratio gets off. And that's all sugar because it has to go somewhere. And then what begins to happen is then it ends up in the bloodstream. When we're in the bloodstream, right, hemoglobin's function carries oxygen. It can carry 4 if you want to remember yourself back to chemistry, right? So we got hemoglobin here, 4 molecules of oxygen it can bind. What did I just say? We have to get sugar out of the body. So what begins to happen? Bling, bling, sugar, sugar. Now I only have 2 oxygens. And now as hemoglobin, I don't have as much oxygen to get to the tissues or the cells that need oxygen. Scary, right? That's how hemoglobin A1C, which we're going to get to in a minute, but that's how that marker came about. So that's a blood marker that talks about as it elevates over a certain number. Once we start to look at 5.8, 5.9, 6.0, we're starting to get into prediabetes, right? That's how that marker is read. Hopefully that makes sense. I try to have fun when I teach so that you all get it. But just imagine an army of people trying to put sugar in your body somewhere and it doesn't know where to put it. And if it can't put it somewhere, it's got to get out because you've got to function. So that's where weight gain comes in. So remember, high cholesterol is not a fat problem. If you remember back to your ancestors, they didn't have cardiovascular disease, diabetes, all of these diseases that we have now because they didn't eat the high processed foods with the dyes and things and all the sugars in them. Inflammation causes disease. Sugar is an inflammatory food. Hopefully, I'm 100% making sense here and that you're getting it because that's my goal. I never want to speak above you so that you don't get it. So, what happens? Let's go to energy because that's another consumption of a large amounts of sugar. I'll get in a little bit to the cortisol curve in a minute, but what happens is sugar provides temporary energy. It provides temporary energy. Then what happens is you get a crash. So when you consume sugary foods and drinks, you get this rapid spike in your blood sugar, and then it's followed by a sudden dump. Then you feel fatigued and low energy. How many people have reached sugar to give them energy? And maybe it's not sugar because you're like, Dr. Donahue, I don't eat a lot of sugar. Do you go grab crackers? Do you go grab some cold rice? I don't know. Like, what are you eating that's sugary? Like, we're going to talk about what constitutes a food that fits the sugar place. Okay, so insulin resistance, we just kind of talked about that, right? So after a while, when there's so much sugar in the body, you become insulin resistant. This is another factor I want to share with you. I don't know about you, but it's super scary for me to hear somebody say, I have diabetes. Like, to me, that's cancer, not literally, not a diagnosis of cancer, but it's scary. It's scary. So if you are pre-diabetic or even diabetic, you have been high blood sugar, low blood sugar, high blood sugar, low blood sugar, insulin resistant because your body has to deal with all this sugar for 10 to 12 years before you're diagnosed with pre-diabetes and or right on to diabetes. Please hear these numbers. So your body has been out of check with insulin and sugar for that amount of time. Scary, right? When all you had to do was learn what foods work the best for you. Simple? Well, it doesn't seem that simple for many people because they're not educated in it. And this is why I love what I do. How many are getting this? Like, just drop yes in the comments. Like, it's making sense and you're hitting home and you're getting it because it's not difficult, but you just have never understood it. It actually brings tears to my eyes, actually, that we've gone on this long. This is a problem that just happened over the last 3 years. Most people were insulin resistant. Most people's immune systems weren't strong, which again, I said, we're going to talk about the immune system in a minute. So when we have large amounts of sugar, we have an increased risk of chronic disease. So excessive sugar takes us into a risk of everything we just talked about. Now, I want to make it clear when I say diabetes here. Sorry, I should have said two things before I started. I'm talking type 2 diabetes. For those are type 1, I apologize. That's an autoimmunity to your beta cells. So I'm talking about late onset diabetes. So we're looking at chronic diseases like overweight, obesity, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, hypertension, cardiovascular disease. I just said that, sorry. High cholesterols and cancers, right? Because we mentioned certain cancers, not all cancers, because of course, genetic cancers, gene specific are totally different. But when you start to understand how sugar is affecting you, then you can now make informed choices as to how can you reduce sugar intake, which we're going to go over this whole 5 days. So, when we're looking at the immune system, I kind of hit on it a little bit. The sugar is detrimental because it can't function appropriately. So, high sugar can lead to chronic inflammation, chronic acid weakens the immune system. So sugar inhibits. So white cells are what is part of our blood makeup. When you get like a CBC, a complete blood count, we're looking at red and white. White cells are what fights off infection. So what starts to happen is sugar hinders the ability of white blood cells to actually combat viruses and bacteria. So then effectively they can't fight off disease. So again, why would we want to dump so much sugar into our body? It's all coming together for you. So it can also, like we talked about earlier, disrupt the gut bacteria. So then when the gut bacteria is off, the gut is your largest immune system, and that plays a huge role in the functioning of the immune system. So when we inhibit the immune system, sugar leaves the body more vulnerable to disease, right? So then now illnesses and pathogens cannot be defended by our immune system. So the more we decrease sugar, the stronger and more resilient our immune system has the ability to fight off infection that comes its way. Simple, right? Like these are basic areas. I just tried to choose really basic areas that you're all struggling with so that I can hit home and help you out. So these are like simple areas. So when we look at high sugar and or pre-diabetes into type 2 diabetes, you know, the health complications are real, and I am not here to bring fear. I'm just here to really share with you information and make it compact so that you can like write it down, take notes, and you not become a statistic. And if you're headed towards a statistic, let's turn the ship around and go the other way, right? So when we have type 2 diabetes, we're looking at kidney diseases. We're looking at neuropathy, which means there's areas in your body. It usually starts in your feet as individuals age. And you can't, you know, the sensation, the pinpricks, the feeling, if any of you have gone to a neurologist or actually come to me, I don't know if any patients are on here at this point in time, but, you know, you can't feel your feet. That's neuropathy. You can also have vision loss, retinopathy, hearing impairment, skin conditions, because it usually happens from the gut, right? But skin conditions and infections, depression and or anxiety. Why? That we talked about, like that dopamine, that serotonin is mostly in the gut. If we dump all this sugar in the gut and we're having the highs and the lows, we emotionally can't balance ourselves. So that is seen a lot in diabetes, depression and anxiety. So, and if I can't remember the exact number. I think it's 83 or 93 million people are going undiagnosed right now of diabetes and insulin resistance, which is super scary to me. And almost 40% of the population at this point in time has diabetes. And I'm not saying everybody on here is, but many people are okay with it. Like when patients come into my clinic, they're like, yeah, I just have diabetes and I'd like to not take a pill. I'm like, just this is how our world has come together. So think of all those complications that sugar can actually bring onto the body. And just by removing it, imagine how much healthier. And even like, I'll talk about anti-aging, all of you, but anti-aging is like, get sugar out of your body, move your body, drink water, get oxygen to your cells, decrease your stress. I'm going to talk about it all, but that's kind of the summation. So I just want to make sure everybody's on board. Is there any questions that I can answer from anybody? Let's see. High cholesterol was due to saturated. No, it's sugar. So the question coming over from YouTube is, I always thought high cholesterol, the bad one, was due to saturated fats. That's what they've told you. That's what they've told you. It's sugar. So sugar, once you start to decrease, like, so that story that I just told you about the army putting sugar all throughout the body, and it can't go into the muscle cells anymore. So now it's starting to dump it into the adipose, and now adipose is cholesterol rises. When I pull patients back off of sugars and they have less sugar in their diet, that's when I start to see the cholesterol get in check. So that's why when people come in with high cholesterol or even pre-diabetes, I'm like, oh, no starches. We're looking at protein, vegetables, and fats and limited starches. So there is a method to my madness. I'm not just doing it to irritate those. But so there's another question in here. Love it. Can diabetes and pre-diabetes be reversed? Mm-hmm. The trick is this: if you're already on insulin, just in general, if somebody's on insulin, it's a little bit harder to reverse it. And the more medications you're on, it's more challenging to slowly get off those medications. If you're recently diagnosed or you're, in that pre-diabetic state, it makes it much more easy flowing to pull yourself back the other way. Is it challenging? Sure. Do you have emotional breakdown? Sure, because I'm taking sugar away from you. Remember, I said it's a drug, but it can be reversed. And I wish we would talk about this, right? I wish we would talk about this, because what I didn't tell you yet is type 3 diabetes is Alzheimer's. This is the only country not talking about it. I don't know about you, but I say this all the time, and I say this to my patients. I want my brain when I'm 80. I have a father with cognitive decline who's chosen diabetes. So you can see how passionate I am about this. It's like, why? Why? When we can just make changes, I say just, trust me, when my patients walk with me, I'm there for accountability. And I love that all of you are on here right now from all different channels, because you're all supporting one another. God put us on this earth to all support one another, right? And so that the more that we dive in and we learn and we understand, like I tell my patients all the time, I want you to understand why I'm doing what I'm doing with you, because you're more apt to do it. I'm not going to say getting off sugar is easy, but I will say it'll be the best thing that you ever do. Okay. So when we're looking at hormones and sugar, I'm just going to do the general ones that I really look at. And then I'm going to talk about the labs that I look at. And then I'm going to open it for questions over the next, 20 minutes or so towards the end. So insulin, we talked about. It's released from the pancreas. It's one of the numbers that I do look at. It's really variable, but I do look at insulin. I know endocrinologists feel like it's not an accurate number. It's okay, but it kind of gives me an idea. I mean, I struggled. I was right where you were years ago. And I just getting your insulin in check was the best thing I ever did. And then I got mine too low, so I had to balance it out. So ways that we can actually get our insulin resistance and improve what we call insulin sensitivity. A lot of these are going to cross over with each other. So exercise. Remember I talked about the muscle saying I have enough glucose? Glycogen gets stored into the muscle, and we need to use the sugar that we put in the body, and that opens it up for more glucose to get stored in the muscle and to be used. So the other thing I want you to also note that sugar is not bad and we need carbohydrates, but it's how much we're putting in. Please remember that. I'm not saying that all sugars and all carbs are bad. So exercise regularly, do some sort of weight resistance training. That's going to help decrease your insulin resistance. Sleeping 8 to 9 hours. I don't care if you tell me that you can do 3 to 4 hours, you're not sleeping soundly, and sleep throughout the night. Omega-3 fatty acids are going to be seen in like fishes, fish oils, halibuts, salmons. Those have good, that has really good quality omega-3. That helps with insulin sensitivity. Changing your diet. One of the nutrition plans that we know is near and dear to our heart around insulin is and cardiovascular diseases, the Mediterranean diet. But when people work with me, I'm actually working with them around what foods work best for their type. So, why the Mediterranean diet has gotten really great results when it's been researched is because of the omega-3s in it. It's an all foods diet. It's got nuts. It's got raw olive oil. Please don't ever cook with olive oil. It's a carcinogen. Like you can use sunflower oil. You can use ghee, which is clarified butter. If you're okay with coconut oil, that's another option. So you want to eat whole foods and limit your starches and sugars, which we're going to talk about. That's going to help you. Maintaining moderate weight and building muscle is pretty, that makes sense, right? And then you want to focus on low glycemic carbs. I should have built a chart out for you. So low glycemics are the fruits and the vegetables that don't spike your sugar. So let's talk about fruits. It'll be raspberries, blueberries, blackberries, strawberries. That's an idea of low glycemic. You can Google it. High glycemic vegetables are going to be like sweet potatoes, squashes, carrots. That's kind of an idea of high glycemic vegetables. Low glycemic vegetables are all the ones in the greens, the broccolis, the celeries, the kales, the Swiss chards, the bok choy, the cauliflower, all the lettuces. The other simple starches that you're going to hear me talk about, and I just talked about it now, so I might not have to again, are like your rices, your breads, your quinoas. Even though quinoa has really good protein in it, you want to be conscientious how much you eat. And then rices, brown rice, pastas, those are your simple starches, and those are ones that have high glycemic. So what you want to do is you want a high nutrient dense nutrition plan when we're actually creating your plan. So those are all the areas that can help your insulin resistance, everything that I listed. And I would actually add water in there as well. And I would actually add, I'm thinking of this sometimes as I go, it comes out. I would also add stress in, like limited stress. Leptin resistance isn't tested a lot, but it's another one that I actually test. We want to lower your leptin levels. So again, maintaining a healthy weight. Leptin resistance is quite like somewhat connected to insulin resistance, and sometimes you'll have higher leptin. I don't love the term obese, but they call, higher leptin levels and obesity. So you want to maintain a healthy weight, decrease your fat, build your muscle. That's going to help reduce your leptin levels because you don't want high leptin levels. Again, sleep is going to be connected in there, and moving your body. So we've talked about insulin. We've talked about leptin. Another that's not so easy to test that happens in sugar is ghrelin. So that's sometimes when you start to restrict calories and you start to come off of sugars and you feel hungry, the hormone ghrelin is going to be released, and leptin levels are going to decrease, and it's going to tell you that you're hungry. And these are where your hunger and your hunger cravings are going to come in. So that's a hormone that actually also happens in the body when you feel hungry. So you want to again reduce those levels. Um, Maintain a body weight. I mean, waist to hip ratio. So less than one in women and less than 0.8 in men. That's the ratio. If you eat more consistently, that's going to help keep your ghrelin levels in check, because they're going to get high right before a meal, ready to share with you, like, I'm hungry, right? So that's when that kind of kicks in. Our friend cortisol, are we all doing okay? I got a lot going on here, but like I really want to get through this, because I want you to hear like all these hormones are all working together for you. So cortisol is your friend and it's your foe. So cortisol is going to decrease inflammation in your joints. That's why corticosteroid shots work, right? However, the brain doesn't know the difference between running away from that saber-toothed tiger or the stress that you've been putting yourself to get that job done or get that function done or pick up your child at school, or I got to hurry up and make a meal or feed my family, whatever that is. Your body doesn't know the difference. So it's that fight or flight response that we all talk about. And if you're in that constant fight and you're constantly throwing cortisol off, it can't do what it's supposed to do. So you want to manage your cortisol levels. And when you have high cortisol all the time, your body's going to just hold on to the weight, really. And so until we get those cortisol levels in check, and we know that your circadian rhythm of the cortisol, which I'm not going to get into today, but if we know those are in check, that's going to actually help as well. So you really want to optimize your sleep, because your cortisol follows the rhythm. It's highest in the morning, starts to drop off throughout the day, and then it'll blip around 2 to 4 p.m. and then it'll drop off and get low, and it'll say, oh, I'm tired, it's time to go to bed. So that's cortisol. So you don't want it elevated at night. So if you're not sleeping, I'm not doing insomnia here, but you might want to get your cortisol levels checked. Let's see. Irregular, shift workers, like people that work in the hospital at night, that's so tough on their cortisol. It's really tough on. Exercising regularly. So if somebody has low cortisol in the morning, for example, what I would have them do is I would have them, if they have enough energy, I would have them do a high intensity workout, maybe like jump on a rebounder or do some jumping jacks, or unless they had chronic fatigue, something like that. That's going to help elevate the cortisol. If it's high at night and I see it on a cortisol curve, what am I going to do? I'm going to have them do more meditation and prayer and connection and gratitude journals, like whatever will bring them back into an emotional groundedness. That's really going to help the calming, right? Because we want to get calm. Practice mindfulness is going to help us. Prayer we just talked about, but practicing mindfulness is going to really help us get into check. And this is research. I'm not just saying this. Mindfulness and prayer and meditation, we can go all the way to the extreme to the monks, but what I want to say to you is that when we're in that calm state and we're grateful, that's almost like anti-aging as well. And we're really getting into like connecting to our body, being grateful that we're on this earth, being grateful that God let us live another day. All of this is really like so important for cortisol. And it's going to help you lower your cortisol levels when you can just step back. And the other one is breath. What a concept. Stop and breathe. Do some deep breathing, right? Eat a balanced diet. Limit your sugars. Limit your refined grains. Saturated fats may and could higher cortisol levels, which is one of the questions that that was asked about saturated fats. The cortisol levels could relate back to the sugar as well, and it can help you lower your cortisol. So for many of us women out there, we all have estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. It's just that men have a higher level of testosterone, less estrogen, progesterone. But usually the estrogen is what affects women as they age. Your progesterone starts to drop off. You go into perimenopause, you go into menopause. And so you want to reduce the risk of you want to manage your weight basically through menopause. So many people are like, as our progesterone actually helps us build muscle and we get less progesterone as we age, um, you really want to support healthy maintenance and keep your body moving. God put us on this earth to move our body. And so many people don't like exercise, but like if we don't exercise, it's kind of like if you park a car and you never drive it for 5 years, what's going to happen? Or you don't change the oil after a while, right? So putting the foods in and moving our body, that's going to help us have less chronic disease. So low estrogen levels may make you feel like you can't work out. So if that's a symptom that you're having, then get on board with myself or a functional medicine practitioner that can actually look at your hormones. And when I look at your hormones, I look at all of them. I even look at how you detox your hormones, because we want to make sure you're getting rid of your estrogen, that you're methylating appropriately, that you don't have any genetic SNPs that are happening, because we methylate trillions of times, on a daily basis. The last one I'm going to talk about is what we call CCK. So that is another hormone that is released when you have hunger, and it tells us if you're full or tells us if you're full or not. So in order to keep that in check, you want to have healthy amounts of protein. So let's do a little fun thing right here. So we have proteins. Say we have turkey. My patients know I don't love chicken, but you could do chicken if you want. And then we have our crullade donut. They both have the same amount of calories. I think it's a no-brainer at this point for most of us, maybe not, and sorry if it is not, that we know that animal protein is going to be better for our body. It's going to keep our blood sugar more balanced. It's going to keep us more energized throughout the day, and we're not going to have an energy crash. That's why the function of calories is not always a good number. And that's why I'm going to go over macronutrients with you. Calories are great. We do want to have, if we're trying to lose weight and drop weight, and say our calories are 1,600, but we want to eat quality calories, not unfulfilling calories, and then not calories and sugary foods and things that can spike everything that we just talked about. And then the other piece to get CCK in check and your hunger hormones, again, it's that E word, it's exercise, or that M word, movement and momentum, right? So one of the keys to keeping like your sugar in check and an anti-aging tool is to keep muscle mass on you, whether it's to do like push-ups. I'm doing a challenge with a friend of mine right now, and we're adding the amount of push-ups that we do each week. You could do something fun like that for accountability, like around sugar, or, create fun to reach your goal, right? But you want to build muscle. Did you know that women are 4 times more likely to develop osteoarthritis than men? That's related to decreased muscle mass. And that's a major root cause of disease when we don't have muscle. You see when the elderly, I know my parents, it's hard for me to watch. They sit down or go to stand up, or if I go to a nursing home, or if I'm even in a hospital supporting somebody and they can't sit up and they can't stand, that's muscle mass. We want to remain at normal levels or quality levels or muscle, because when we build muscle, you're going to burn glycogen, like I talked about in the beginning, right? We're going to get rid of those stored sugary carbs. And muscle does decline as you age if you don't take care of it. So healthy muscle and toned muscle is anti-aging. You eat food, you drink water, you have a healthy mindset. Aging is, a no-brainer, or you could go do Botox, but I don't know. So it's so important for you to stay strong. as you age, whatever that looks like for you, yoga, tai chi, qigong, small balancing muscles, chiropractic support to make sure your spine is all in check. Okay, so how's everybody doing? That was a lot. That's all I'm going to talk about on the clinical. And so now we're going to dive into macronutrients. So let me just make sure there's no questions. I see a couple questions in VIP, but let me go over that with you once we get off this call so that I can answer detailed calls for all of you. There's a question about emotions, and emotions are challenging when you're removing sugars. So you just want to do it in a stepwise fashion. Are there any other questions that are coming up over all those hormones that I talked about? Oh, shoot. I forgot to talk about what else do I test. So when I'm looking for possible insulin resistance, we talked about insulin. We talked about some of those hormones. I also look at hemoglobin A1C. I look at liver enzymes, which is AST and ALT. I look at glucose. And then if I have pulled a hormone panel, I look at cortisol, the cortisol curve, the estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. So all of those together will give me a clear indication of how the body is functioning from a hormonal standpoint to get the food in check. So that's what I would think about asking my practitioner if you think you have prediabetes. I know there's patients that have come to my clinic wanted, on Medicare, and they want to get coverage. So they want to go to their doctor and get labs done to see if they're pre-diabetic, and they just won't do them. And it's really sad to me. So then they pay out of pocket, have it done, and then we have the picture. So there's ways to get it done, and always know that and ask the right questions. So to close out today, because it's been amazing and I don't want to go too far over, what I want to talk about is macronutrients to set you up for tomorrow. So macronutrients are, our key macronutrients are three. We've got carbohydrates, we have protein, and we have fats. So carbs are the primary body source of energy. That's why it's not good. When I take people off of simple starches, I don't have them on a low carb diet. I have them eating 12 varying types of vegetables a day. So I'm not putting low carb, I'm putting low starches, simple starches. So carbohydrates are going to be found, again, we talked about this earlier, but it's going to be found in like grains, like rice, breads, pastas. One of the high glycemic fruits would be like pineapple, dates, raisins, apricots, like dried, right? Pineapple, I said pineapple, banana. Those are another amount of high sugary fruits. So carbohydrates give you 4 calories per gram. So when we're doing carbohydrates, I want you to focus on, which I'm going to talk about tomorrow, complex carbohydrates that are fiber rich and nutrient dense, rather than simple carbohydrates like starches and sugars and rices and pastas and bread. When you choose bread, choose a really good quality whole bread. So now we come to proteins, which are the powerhouse of your cell. And I can tell all of you, unless you're my patient, because I do see some patients on here, that many of you don't eat enough protein. A woman should eat a minimum of 100 grams of protein. If we're trying to drop, if we're right around the weight that we want to be, I say 1 gram per pound of body weight. 0.8 would be on the lower side if we're trying to lose some weight and get some weight off. So 0.8 grams per pound of body weight up to 1 gram per pound of body weight. That translates into, if you're 120 pounds, 120 grams of protein, like, I'm not going to do the math, but like 95 to 120 on the low side to the normal side, right? So I want you to think about that, because most people don't eat enough protein. And protein is going to carry you and keep you satiated and not as hungry, as well as fats. So you need insulin with protein, and you need insulin with starch and carbohydrates. So we all know we're looking at the animal proteins, we're looking at tofu, we're looking at eggs, we're looking at fishes, legumes, beans, though those are starchy, nuts and seeds. And proteins are also 4 calories per gram, for example. So lastly, fats. They are so crucial for hormone production, insulation, and protecting organs. So when you have high cholesterol, think about getting your cholesterol in check with sugar before you go on a statin. If you're questioning a statin, there are books out there on statin in the brains, and most of the primary care physicians, unfortunately, aren't even familiar with them. I asked my dad's primary care physician, and he had never heard of it. The first thing they want to do is put you on a statin. If you have cardiovascular disease, I'm not saying go on it or not go on it. I just want you to know your risk ratio. I want you to be aware and knowledgeable of why and what it could do. Like statin is going to block all the cholesterols, right? And you do need cholesterols. You need the brain for the hormones, for cortisol, for all of that. So the fats are 9 grams, so they provide the highest amount of energy and they don't need insulin. Hence why keto diets work if you're used to having high amounts of sugar in your diet. I do keto diets with patients sometimes who have cancer and things like that, high, protein, fats, and limited starches and limited fruits and stuff, because once you're on that train of your body knowing it's there, it can help. And there is research around that, but short term for other inflammatory conditions. So when we're looking at healthy fats, we're looking at like avocados, olive oils, fatty fishes, coconut oils. So you want to choose unsaturated fats over saturated fats and trans fats. A lot of the trans fats and the saturated fats are in processed foods. So we're going to go over balancing your macronutrient intake tomorrow and how to read labels. And today what we're going to sum up with is, how do you look for, because I want you guys to start thinking about this tomorrow before I see you at 4 or 1 p.m. Pacific time. And I'm sorry, there was a problem with the timing, so my team apologizes. I don't know what happened there. But I want you to start reading food labels, and I want you to start writing down tonight, even into tomorrow, for your own check. Like, what are you eating? Are you eating enough calories? Are you getting in enough protein? Are you getting in enough fat? When you're looking at a label, I'm going to go deep into it tomorrow. But if it says any sugars like sucrose and glucose and fructose and high corn syrup, it's listed in so many different names, dextrose and maltose and anything ending with ose, the higher up on the list of the label, the more sugar in the product it contains. So not only are we looking at sugars, again, I'm going to teach you how to read a label tomorrow, but we're also looking at dietary fiber related to carbohydrates and protein. You also want to be aware of other names of sugar. There's cane juice, malt syrup, fruit juice concentrate, honey, agave nectar, molasses. This is why labels are so important to read. So you're always wanting to look for hidden sources on labels, right? I mean, I know a lot of times, even if I go to a Thai restaurant, I'm like, wow, there tastes sugar. I just have chosen to do no sugar in my diet. It works best for me, but I realize that that's not going to work best for everybody. Alcohol has high sugar in it. But the more you begin to read the labels and be aware of what you're reading, the more you're going to be like, oh, I didn't realize like those crackers had sugar in it. Or like that muffin I liked that I thought was a whole grain muffin, it has more sugars than I thought. The other thing that gets people is like those Starbucks drinks, those sugary drinks, the teas. I just did an interview with Brian Kelly, and he doesn't eat sugar at all either. And he had used to do personal training. And he mentioned that like he just got a tea at a place and he just thought it was unsweetened or whatever. He took a sip of it, he turned it around, and there were like 30 grams of sugar. So there's hidden sugars in your teas as well. So you want to be careful, like when you're reading labels, like how much sugar is getting in there. Because all of that sugar is going to be related to your sugar intake. So I know I put this on the emails, but I want to call it out. Do you know the average American eats 32 teaspoons of sugar a day? 32 teaspoons. Like it might be fun if you guys take like your sugar, if you have any. I can't do this, but if you count 32 teaspoons and look at how much sugar that is, and we wonder why we have chronic disease. It just breaks my heart when this can easily be turned around. When you start to meal prep and cook foods at home and use whole foods from the earth that God gave us, that's when you're going to start to notice you're going to feel better, and you're going to take that load off of you. You're going to take that sugar load off of you. That won't throw all those hormones off that we just talked about. That won't hold on to weight, create obesity, create adipose and fat cells in areas that you don't want them. It'll let you sleep more soundly. You'll be able to exercise. You won't be fatigued. You won't have energy crashes. So I challenge all of you who aren't cooking at home, start to be aware and start to cook at home. And just be aware of where your processed foods are coming in. Oh, that was a lot of information. Do I still have everybody? Are there any questions or comments or anything that I can answer? Because it's 5 right on the nose. I never do that. I always talk over. There was a lot of information. I hope you guys took notes. I hope it was valuable, because I do this for you guys, because I don't want to see any of you sick. I don't want to see you guys be the next statistic. And I'm passionate about this, 100% passionate. So I guess I don't have any questions. Did I do a great job? Thank you. You loved it. We talked about the cholesterol. Awesome. Hey guys, I've got patients here. Everybody's here from different areas. Some of you probably jumped on when I asked you where you're from. Lots of great information. You're welcome. It's my super, super pleasure. So if nobody has any other questions, I'm going to jump off the lives and jump over to my VIPs so that they can ask me detailed questions. Anything else coming up for you? Don't forget to tune in tomorrow, because tomorrow I am talking about how to create healthy meals with less sugar and how to read labels, how to meal prep, how can you create a plan that works best for your sugar, as you start to detox sugar. Healthy recipes, if you guys need any, there are probably a million of them in my brain from doing this. So that's going to be tomorrow. So please tune in tomorrow. Again, it's 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 1 p.m. Pacific Time. I love all of you. Take a peek at what I don't want you to become obsessed, but I want you to be aware of what's in your nutrition. Think about, what am I eating tonight? Do I have a lot of simple starches that I have planned on my plate? Am I going to have a dessert? What does tonight get to look like? Track your food tonight, and tomorrow write it down. Bring your questions back tomorrow. So I'll answer questions right off the get-go before you get going. Before I get going on my sugar detox rant. And I love you guys all. Thanks for tuning in. We've got all channels. We've got YouTube. We've got Facebook. We've got Instagram. I've never seen so many people on Instagram. Hello to all of you that are waving from a distance. I love you all. Go easy. Be easy on yourself. And remember, don't judge yourself. Just slowly make changes. There's no judgment here. All right? We will talk to you guys all soon. Have a beautiful evening or afternoon, whatever you're finishing off with. So much love. VIP, stay on, and I'll be right with you.